study of the Bhagavatam. We will resume from the first canto, chapter 9, verse 2, in the prayers of Bhishmadev. And as usual, we'll begin with our Mangalacharan prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam namaskrityam naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jaya udire ashtakeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavate uttam shloke bhaktir bhavatir naishtiki om ajnanatimirandasya jnananjana shalakaya chakshurun militam yena tasmai shri gurave namaha. So the 8th chapter had ended with the prayers of Kunti Devi, and then we see that after Kunti Devi had finished with the recitation of the prayers, then Krishna smiles slightly, and he again ascends on his chariot and gets ready to go to Dwarka. So at that time, he is approached by Maharaj Yudhishthir. And Sutta Goswami says that Maharaj Yudhishthir lovingly implores him to stop. And in the discussion we had discussed that how Krishna, even though he is supremely independent, he is still controlled by the love of his devotee. So earlier on, Krishna had made up his mind to go to Dwarka. And Krishna is the personality of Godhead, so he is invincible. Once he makes up his mind, it's as good as done. But stronger than the will of Krishna is that of his devotees. So Kunti Devi tried to stop him, but he did not stop. But he did not leave Kunti Devi. He physically left, but he stayed back with Kunti Devi in terms of her realizations. And Maharaj Yudhishthir stopped him because of the distress that he was feeling. And in the next set of 5 verses, Maharaj Yudhishthir gave the different reasons why he feels that he has committed the greatest of the greatest sin in this battle of Mahabharata, where he felt for his selfish reasons, it had resulted in a genocide. Millions of people were killed. So many women were left unprotected. So many new enemies were made. So the 9th chapter begins with Krishna, the brothers, the Pandava brothers, heading on the chariot towards the place where Bhishma Dev is lying, waiting to pass away. So we'll do 192. Tadate bhratara sarve sada shiva swarnabhushitaha anvagachan rather vipra vyasadamya dayastata. At the time, all his brothers followed him on beautiful chariots drawn by first-class horses decorated with gold ornaments. With them were Vyas and rishis like Dhaumya, the learned priest of the Pandavas, and others. So Sutta Goswami is describing the entourage of of the Pandavas, and we'll see that there is a reason that he's describing it. Comes forward in a couple of verses. So important to see that Yudhishthira does not go all by himself. Krishna accompanies him. So that is the mood of Krishna. Krishna could have given him instructions and left, but Krishna actually personally accompanies him. Though we see that Krishna does not really do much. He does not really, of course, Krishna being there is a lot, but Prabhu, can you change the formatting of the screen? Thank you. So, so Krishna doesn't do much, but just out of affection for the Pandavas and the Yudhishthira Maharaj, he accompanies, and then wherever there is Krishna, wherever there is piety, there are Brahmanas. So we see along with them is Vyasadev, Dhaumya. So Dhaumya, you may recollect, he is the Purohit. He is the one who accompanied the Pandavas while they were in the forest. He is the brother of Asita, a very exalted sage, and he stays with the Pandavas all along. He actually then later on performs the Ashwamedha Yagya. He performs the Rajasuya Yagya. So all of them as a procession go to meet Bhishma. Okay, 193. Bhagwan api viprashe rathena cha dhananjaya sater virachota nripaha kuveriva guyakaha. O sage amongst the Brahmanas, Lord Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, also followed, seated on a chariot with Arjun. Thus King Yudhishthir appeared very aristocratic, like Kuvera, surrounded by his companions, the Guyakas. So Sutta Goswami says, O sage amongst the Brahmanas. So he's addressing Shaunak Rishi over here, and he's continuing to describe the procession. So earlier on he said they were in chariots with horses decorated with gold. Now he's saying that they appeared very aristocratic. Kuber is the god of wealth. He's the treasurer of the demigods. So very, very opulent. And Sutta Goswami is using him as a yardstick. That think about Kuber and how opulent he dresses, how opulently he conducts himself, and the Pandavas were just like them. So, question for you. So, think about this scenario that they're going to meet a person who is close to death. The person is lying, the body completely pierced with arrows, with lot of pain, close to death. And you would expect the people there, out of deference and respect to the situation, to go in simple clothes. You would expect it as if they're going to Tirtha. They wear a single garment, dhoti, dressed very, very simply. But here we see the opposite. The chariots are resplendent. The Yudhishthir and Arjun, so they're almost as if they're going for a big state function. And the question is that why do you see this is happening? This can't be. So the Goswami, he spends 2 verses talking about it. So it's obviously important. Why do you think it is as it is?
For Bhishma to have a kingly look of their grandsons.
To have a look of what, Prabhu?
As as they are taking over the kingdom,
Uh-huh.
to have that kind of a vision, to give those remembrances to Bhishma.
Okay. Okay. Good. Anybody else?
Yeah, Praji, so just to expand on that, like, so Bhishma, they wanted to see like Pandavas, because he had always seen them suffering. So like like, it was his dream to basically see that the Pandavas were, um, they were getting, they were going to be the king,
Yeah.
ruling.
Right. Right. So both answers are on the mark. That Krishna wanted to assure Bhishma. So we had said earlier on that Krishna, he wanted to accomplish many things. He does that. So one of the things that he wanted to demonstrate by virtue of showing mercy on Bhishma Dev is to assure and appease him. So he wanted to assure that the kingdom is in good hands. These are the new kings that are coming. And he wanted to appease him because he had been so agitated. In Mahabharata earlier on, you see that Bhishma Dev, he was so agitated when he sees the Pandavas dressed in barkskin, when his daughter Kunti Devi living in such extreme circumstances. And so he wanted to give peace to his heart. That look, that these children of yours who had led such difficult lives, now they're properly restored. Thank you for your service and your sacrifice. Very good. So another point also that we see in this verse, it starts with Bhagavan Api, and and the acharyas say that this is from a lecture by Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada says that Sudha could have mentioned the name Krishna Api, but he's special. He says Bhagavan Api. For all the others, the name is mentioned, but Krishna is addressed as Bhagavan Api. So even though he is there in the group, and it says Krishna followed, which means that Krishna was behind, and he was behind out of deference. But Krishna is always Bhagavan. He is always the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That position is never mitigated. Okay, next verse 194. Dishvanipatitam bhumau divaschutam ivamaram pranameo pandava bhishmam saguna sahachakrana. Seeing him, Bhishma, lying on the ground like a demigod fallen from the sky, the Pandav king Yudhishthir, along with his younger brothers and Lord Krishna, bowed before him. So Sahachakrina. So everybody bowed in front of Bhishma. And one might say that it is okay for the Yudhishthir and the Pandavas, his brothers, to bow before Bhishma, but why Krishna? Because just a few verses down, Bhishma will call Krishna Bhagwan Sakshat. He will say that you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Adi Narayana, that you are the original Narayan. But yet we see Krishna offering obeisances to him, and the reason again is that Krishna is performing his Nar Leela, and as part of the Nar Leela, Bhishma has a superior position to him. So Krishna's position is never mitigated. He is always the personality of Godhead, even when he's giving obeisance. So one must not think that because Krishna is giving obeisances to Bhishma, when the personality of Godhead comes in the form of Krishna, then his position is mitigated in any way. So Krishna here is called Chakrina, and Chakrina is the or let me ask you this question: that why do you think Krishna is called Chakrina over here?
Probably because just like the presence of chakra, uh, because he holds chakra, that is one reason why he called Chakrina. And probably that is where like all evil goes away, and Bhishma is again going to dispel the doubts of Yudhishthira.
Okay, good. Any other thoughts? So can you think of a pastime between Krishna and Bhishma that involves a chakra?
Yeah, he took the wheel out of the chariot together.
He took the wheel out of the chariot. So Krishna is called Chakrina for, as Ravi Prabhu pointed out, because he carries the Sudarshan chakra. But after this pastime with Bhishma, he was also called Chakrina for the same reason, because the wheel of the chariot is also called chakra. And his devotees call him Chakrina as one who carried the wheel of the chariot. So Suta Goswami calls him Chakrina to glorify Bhishma, that he is the one, because of him Krishna has gotten this name and this wonderful pastime was performed. Okay, next verse 195. Tatra brahma rishaya sarve deva rishayascha sattamaha rajarishayascha tatrasan drashtum bharata pungavam. Just to see the chief of the descendants of King Bharat, Bhishma, all the great souls in the universe, namely the rishis amongst the demigods, brahmanas and kings, all situated in the quality of goodness, were assembled there. So they came there, not for a spectacle, that there is tamasha going on, let's see what's going on. And these were exalted people who were not really the kind who would be materially very agitated. That person is dying, oh, there's so much of, somebody is very attached to the bodily conception, they would get agitated. These were not the kind of people like that. But yet they came, because for the same reason they came when Parikshit Maharaj began to fast until death, because they knew that these are the times when the highest realizations of these people are presented. We see that in the conversation between Parikshit Maharaj and Sukadev Goswami, and we'll see that in the conversation between Bhishma Dev and Yudhishthira. So they essentially came for Krishna Katha, and also because Krishna was personally present over there. And of course, this is not to say that they are hard-hearted, that they don't care that there is that Bhishma is going to pass away. There is that that separation that also drives them, but really they came for Krishna Katha. Okay, next two verses. Parvat narado domya bhagwan badrayana vridatsvo bardavaja shashiya renuka sutaha vashishta indra pradabdha strito gritasmadositaha Pakshivan Gautamatrascha Kaushikota Sudarshana. All the sages like Parvat Muni, Narad, Dhaumya, Vyas, the incarnation of Godhead, Bhradasva, Bhardwaj, and Parshuram, and disciples Vashishta, Indapramad, Trita, Gritasmad, Asit, Kakshivan, Gautam, Atri, Kaushik, and Sudarshan were present. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada gives a brief summary, a brief biographical summary of these verses, of these sages. So I will not go into them. So you can read the purport, and most of the sages are quite famous. So we know, like Parshuram and Bhardwaj and Vashisht. Some not so, like Ritasmada and Trita. Some not so. But Prabhupada gives a short biography. And the last one is kind of interesting, Sudarshana. And Prabhupada says Sudarshana is actually the personification of the Sudarshan Chakra. And he's also apparently a sage. And he also comes there to witness and hear the conversation. Okay, next verse. Anyacha munaya brahman brahmarahata dayamalaha shishye rupeta jajmoho kashyap angira sadayaha. And many others, like Sukadeva Goswami and other purified souls, Kashyap and Angiras and others, all accompanied by the respective disciples, arrived there. So one can understand that there was a big collection of really, really exalted personalities, including the person who will later on speak, Sukadeva Goswami, who will later on speak the Bhagavatam. He is personally come to witness the conversation between Maharaj Yudhishthir and Bhishma Dev. Okay, next verse. Tan sametan mahabhagan uplabhya vasuttamaha pujayamas dharmagya deshakala vibhagavit. Bhishma Dev, who was the best amongst the 8 Vasus, received and welcomed all the great and powerful rishis who were assembled there. For he knew perfectly well all the religious principles according to time and place. So at this point, Sutta Goswami, he is not talking about Bhishma Dev as the son of Shantanu and the son of Ganga Devi. But because Bhishma Dev is almost there, he is almost ready to resume his original position, he has already started calling him as the best of the 8 Vasus. So the Vasus are sons of Kashyap and Aditi, the same category of the Adityas, the demigods. And Bhishma, as we know, he was the head of the Vasus. He has different names. 2 are popular. One is Prabhas, and the other is Deus. So because he was the leader of the Vasus, when Vasishtha cursed the Vasus, then he held him more responsible for the act. They stole his cow. So that is why he said, you will suffer more than the others. So while the other, as soon as they were born, they were drowned by Mother Ganga and they could resume their position. But Dyasu, he had to live for a long time and suffer. According to certain Uppurans, all the 8 Vasus, including Dyasu, returned. But in order to also honor the curse of Vasishtha, the 8 Vasus, they all, with their potency, created a 9th personality. That was a combination of all the 8 Vasus. And that was Bhishma Dev. And according to some acharyas, the 9th, there were 8 Vasus. Bhishma Dev was Dyasu, but he was empowered by the other 7. So even though he was the leader and the most powerful, as a token of gratitude and also understanding that he will lead a very difficult life, the other 7 Vasus, they empowered him by their own potency. So small details. But Sutta Goswami, he is acknowledging the fact now that the time for Bhishma to return to his not constitutional position, but his position is imminent. Then he also uses the term Dharmagya Desha Kala Vibhagavit. And that is significant to us as practicing devotees. So why does he say Dharmagya Desha Kala Vibhagavit? That Bhishma was adjusting things according to Desha Kala Vibhagavit, which is time, place, and circumstance. So what do you think he was adjusting?
How he acts in a given situation, right? Because he
Something more specific.
as per the current situation, Prabhuji.
Since he's the Mahajan, like, he adjusted based on the preaching, based on time, place.
So so Bhishma Dev is a Kshatriya, and in front of him are coming these great rishis, these brahmanas. So what do you expect a Kshatriya to do? You would expect the Kshatriya to give obeisances, because in terms of the varna, they are superior to him. But Bhishma Dev cannot do it. He is lying on a bed of arrows, completely incapacitated. So he offers obeisances by words, by glances, and by gestures. So Sutta Goswami said Dharmagya, that he's what he does is correct, because he is he is a Mahajan, as you said, and he knows he knows how to adjust. So there is a lecture on this, on Desh Kal Patra, that Srila Prabhupada gave, and the reason I'm spending a little bit of time on this is because it's very relevant to us as practicing devotees. We do have to constantly keep working on that. So Prabhupada gave this lecture on Bhagavad Gita 7.1 in Fiji. He says that that one religion is given in Bhagavad Gita. Sarva dharman pratyajaya maham ekam sharnam. 1866. To surrender to God the great and abide by his instructions, that is called religion. It may be that Hindus may be following the same principle in a different way, or the Christians may be following the same principle in a different way. That is called Desh Kal Patra. According to time, atmosphere, and the performer, there may be little difference. But the real purpose of dharma is to surrender to God and try to love him. That is religion. So I was very fascinated by this lecture, because Prabhupada is giving an explanation. Sometimes people ask. I remember once I was giving a lecture. I don't know if Ravi Prabhu, you were there, but there was one person who, as soon as I stopped for question, and he said, "You're speaking about Hinduism. What about Christianity? What about Judaism? The majority of the world are not Hindus." So, and he was a Hindu himself. But then he said, "Then how can you say that it's a bona fide religion?" And then I said something similar to that, but he was not in the mood to get convinced. He kept googling stuff and showing it to me. But Srila Prabhupada, he makes this very bold statement that all the religions are the same, that have been adjusted as per Desh, Kal, and Patra. The second point that comes out over here is that Dharmagya Desha Kal Vibhagavat. Who can do the adjustment as per Desh, Kal, and Patra? Dharmagya. A person who knows the principles of religion. So we should start adjusting it according to our convenience, because we may not adjust it properly. We may adjust it depending on, we are more under the modes, so we may adjust it according to the modes. That the essence of chanting is to chant with feeling. So if I chant one round with feeling, that is good enough. I don't have to chant 16 rounds, or so many other. And devotees do that. You see that. I mean, not this is an exaggeration, but you see devotees do stuff, and and then some of it is okay, some of it is perhaps not. But the recommendation is dharmagya. So if you have to adjust it, then on the recommendation of Acharya, Srila Prabhupada adjusted so many when he established ISKCON. And similarly, if you have taken shelter of Guru Maharaj or senior devotees, they can help in the adjustment. So verse gives both the messages that yes, dharma can be adjusted as per Kaldesh Patra, but only by a dharmakya. Okay, next verse 1910. Krishnam cha tad prabhavakya ashinam jagadishwaram hridistam pujayamasa mayopata vigraham. Lord Shri Krishna is situated in everyone's heart, yet he manifests his transcendental form by his internal potency. This very Lord was sitting before Bhishma Dev, and since Bhishma Dev knew of his glories, he worshipped him duly. So this is the transition verse. The previous set of verses were setting the stage. So the stage has been set, and all the paraphernalia has been set. Now the curtain is going to rise on the prayers of Bhishma Dev. This is the verse that raises the curtain, and Sutta Goswami does it by glorifying Krishna. So this is something that we see very typically in prayers. When we saw Arjun praying to Krishna, he prefaced it with glorifying Krishna. When we saw Kunti Devi pray to Krishna, she did the same thing. In this case, Sutta Goswami is doing it, and understandably, Bhishma Dev will, even though he doesn't preface it, but Bhishma Dev will also eventually do it. So Sutta Goswami says that since Bhishma Dev knew his glories, he says Prabhavagya. So he's making this point to us that the person who will be speaking is a person who is worthy of listening with attention. He is a person, initially he said he's Dharmagya, that he's a person who knows the principles of Dharma. Now he said that he is a Prabhavagya, that he is a person who knows the glories of the Supreme Personality of the Godhead. So what exactly does he know? Asinam Jagad Ishwaram Hridistati. He said Bhishma knew that the Lord seated in front of him, Asinam, is also the all-pervading Lord of the universe, Jagat Ishwaram, and also situated in everyone's heart, Hridistata, Paramatma. So in other words, what did Bhishma know? He knew Brahman, he knew Paramatma, and he knew Swayam Bhagavan. So he knew Jagadishwaram, he knew Hridayasthitam, and he knew what's the name? Prabhavagya. So the person who understands Krishna in all his manifestations is certainly qualified to certainly has the realizations to worship him, and we should therefore hear it carefully. So then Sutta Goswami says that the Lord manifested Upata, his form Vigraham, to Bhishma Mayaya, by his internal potencies. So how fortunate is Bhishma that Krishna has personally manifested. Now here Sutta is not talking about just physically seeing Krishna, but he's talking about the fact that Krishna, because you cannot see Krishna unless Krishna allows you to see. So the same Maya that blinds one also opens one's eyes. So he's saying Upatta Vigraham Mayaya, that Krishna personally manifested his form to Bhishma by his internal potency. So Bhishma is under the protection of Krishna's internal potencies. Maya Pata Vigraham. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives an interesting play on the words. So he's saying Maya Pata Vigram. So Bhishma could see Krishna in front of him who had a conflict. So one of the meanings of Vigraham is conflict. So who had a conflict, Maya Pata, and what was the result of that conflict? So this is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur kind of giving away some of the internal rasas of the interaction. So Bhishma is seeing that Krishna who had Vigraham, who had a conflict with Yudhishthir Maharaj. And what was that conflict? That upatta, that he, by his Mayaya, he covered his discrimination. So Bhishma Dev is also seeing the inner pastime playing out. So earlier on we had discussed that Maharaj Yudhishthir was put into delusion by Krishna in order to glorify Bhishma Dev. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is saying that Bhishma is also seeing that. He is seeing the conflict that Yudhishthir has been put by Krishna only for the purpose of satisfying his desires, which also means that the words that will come out of Bhishma's mouths will be ones that will reflect his highest levels of realization. Okay, next verse, 1911. Panduputranupashinan prashraya prema sangatan abhayascha shantanau. 1 minute. Abhaya chastanuragasher anibhutena chakshusha. The sons of Maharaj Pandu were sitting silently nearby, overtaken with affection for their dying grandfather. Seeing this, Bhishma Dev congratulated them with feelings. There were tears of ecstasy in his eyes, for he was overwhelmed with love and affection. So the sights of the opulently dressed Pandavas made Bhishma cry with affection. And we discussed why. Because that's what Bhishma wanted to see. And the second point that is made in this is that the attitude of both Bhishma Dev and the Pandavas is exemplary. Because if you take a step back, so you look at the situation over here, Bhishma is lying on a bed of arrows shot by Arjun. So the person responsible for that situation is right in front of him. And how was Arjun able to shoot arrows at Bhishma? Because Krishna conspired to put Shikhandi in front of him. So the person who cheated him and brought him to this situation is also there. Now look at it from the Pandavas' perspective. That despite the fact that they were virtuous, they were on the right, Bhishma never protected them. Whether it was when Draupadi was being destroyed, when the kingdom was being taken away from them, then even when the battle was being formed, Bhishma was one of the fiercest warriors against. He took a vow to kill the five Pandavas. So by all practical purposes, they should be the interaction should be different. Yudhishthira should be saying, "Good thing you're dead." Bhishma was saying, "How could you have shot me? Why have you come over here and dressed up opulently? Are you trying to show me down?" But nothing of that sort is happening. The tears that are coming from Bhishma's eyes is that of genuine love and affection. And the mood of the Pandavas is that of genuine respect and sorrow. And Prabhupada makes this point that this is the glory of devotees, that they see beyond the surface. And this is, of course, an extreme case, but devotees, they see beyond the surface interaction. If somebody does something to you, and because they're liberal, they will find some way to figure out to look beyond it. Maybe this was for my purification. Maybe I had done something to offend the person. Maybe it is one less karma for me. What is the lesson for me? And Bhishma Dev later on will talk about 5 qualities that make a person great. And we see that at least in action, these qualities being exemplified over here. So after this starts from 1912 starts so I won't call them prayers, they're also called prayers of Bhishma Dev, but there are instructions and prayers mixed. So he gives instructions to the Pandavas, he prays to Krishna. Most of the verses that Bhishma Dev speaks are actually in the category of prayers in the Bhagavatam. In the Mahabharata, they're mostly instructions. As I mentioned last time, that the Shanti Parva of the Brahman of the Mahabharata has 365 chapters, is one of the longest parva, and a majority of them are instructions by Bhishma Dev. There are other instructions also, but majority of them are instructions of Bhishma Dev. But in the Bhagavatam, they have been condensed, and the verses for the glorifications are disproportionately large, which reflects the mood of Sukadeva Goswami, that they want to glorify Krishna. I'll take a pause over here and see if there's any questions or comments.
Prabhuji, I was thinking about this, how Krishna, as Paramatma in the heart of Yudhishthir, he was not, he basically allowed himself to not be satisfied. And that's why he was not satisfied, because of the following, the next pastime. So in case of us, we know that Yudhishthira Maharaj is covered by the Lord's internal potency, and however Krishna wants, he basically does with his pure devotee. But in regards to us, when I'm not saying that the process of Krishna consciousness is to give satisfaction to the mind, and but we do get some. There is some peace and satisfaction in as a byproduct of this process. What is
so there is thank you, it's a good question. So there is there is Kleshandani and Subhuda. There is relief from material distress. There is auspiciousness. Those are the advertised effects of taking to the process of bhakti. And then there is dissatisfaction also. So we also experience that sometimes, not sometimes, but often we want to do more. I remember once, I think 3 or 4 of us devotees, we went to the house of another person. He had called us for dinner prasadam. He was favorable, but not like there. And then we were just talking amongst ourselves. Oh, Prabhu, I got up late tomorrow morning, and I know I did this, and I wasn't able to finish my reading. And then he couldn't help it. He said that you guys are such a sorry lot. All you do is keep lamenting all the time. And generally, when I have people over in my house, and we all talk about the movies that we have seen and the places we have gone and the vacation that we're planning, and all you're talking about is that you ate too much, so you can't get up tomorrow morning, and you didn't chant good rounds, so you're feeling bad about it. And then we got a glimpse of ourselves from somebody else's eyes. So yes, there's a lot of dissatisfaction also, but it's that kind of dissatisfaction that takes us to a good place. And as you said, Achyuta, there's a lot of satisfaction also. It reflects our mixed, our mixed stage, that we are exiting the material conception and entering the spiritual conception. So at both places there is satisfaction and dissatisfaction, and so it's natural that we'll experience it.
So Prajit, that satisfaction is obviously not like it's basically the byproduct of. I mean, it's not that crush. So basically, the dissatisfaction is also helping us in that sense, right?
It is
advance.
it is helping us. It's so I think the question that you're trying to ask is that should we aspire for that satisfaction, or should we just look at it as a byproduct and continue with our devotion?
Right. I mean, I know that it is the external energy that is working on us. It is definitely, we are not in the internal potency, but so this external energy that is working on us, that is also basically helping us in whether the satisfaction or dissatisfaction, that is basically also helping us in advancing, right?
So why would you think that is the external energy? So you're performing the process of bhakti, and through that you're experiencing some satisfaction. You chant a few good rounds, you feel happy. You prepare good prasadam for the deities, you feel happy. Why would you think that is the external energy working on you?
Because it's all in my mind, right? I mean, I'm not so if my material situation changes even a little bit, then I don't feel the same connection, or I don't feel the same if I'm in distress, and if I'm doing my services, that will not give me the same amount of satisfaction if my material situation is kind of comfortable.
So you're saying that it's not absolute, it's relative.
It's relative, and I'm doing it in the modes. I'm not doing it as a pure devotional service. I'm still like performing.
I can hear what you're saying, but it doesn't taste right, doesn't feel right, because it's negating the process of bhakti. Bhakti is not about gloom and doom. It's about being happy. It's about experiencing the anandamai, the bliss of Krishna. I would submit that even the transient happiness that we feel, it may change. That next day, if our dressing is not good, maybe we will feel unhappy about it. Or like you're saying that the next day we are doing dressing, but we are in a bad mood. So even then, the dressing does not help our bad mood. But even then, whatever we get out of the process of bhakti, it's Krishna Prasad, it's Krishna's benediction. So we chant good rounds, you feel happy. I would not say that it's the result of the modes. We may be chanting in the modes. I mean, not may, we definitely are, but we feel satisfaction. That may also be in the modes, but it also has a component of Krishna's reciprocation. If it did not have, then we would not continue. Because when we chant, and chanting is an example of that we often use as a yardstick, because it's something that we put substantial amount of time every day, something that we do every day, and something that we struggle with every day. So can you think of something that you would still do? At one point, this is many years ago, I had a slip disc, and after I became a little better, my doctor said that you have to do these exercises to build up your back muscles. And then I really hated doing those exercises. So I would do it. I was supposed to do it for 1 hour, and then I started doing it for half an hour, and then finally, within a week's time, I was doing it for 5 minutes, and then I stopped completely, just because I didn't like it. Even though I knew that it was for my benefit, I just didn't like it. Now, when we started chanting, earlier on there was, of course, Krishna gives his introductory bonus offer, so you have the taste for it, and then later on it becomes like, oh my God, I have to chant, but then still we chant. So it's not, so that's proof that it's not in the, it's not entirely in the modes, and then what we get out of it is also not entirely in the modes.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
One question, Prabhuji. This is little bit in practical lines. Like in this verse, like the mood of Bhishma Dev and Pandavas, like is of genuine affection and in the taking things in the right spirit, even though if we see them as opponents and one harmed the other. So sometimes I see in our office life, just by seeing the person, I feel that, oh, this person I have to be careful. Immediately I will stop my carefree talk, and I will be reserved, and I choose my words, and I will have that negativity inside. uh, as much as required, that much I speak, and then I will try to avoid them. So there is no sense of and I was one aspect I was wondering that how Krishna can like them also, but at the same time like I see that I lack good feelings for the other person. How do we
No, it's a process. The ability to see friend and foe with the same eyes. It's an advance, though. Technically, um, um, technically we can uh, uh, we can see that only when we have reached Paramatma realization, that we can see everybody with the same eyes. But but practically we are mixed devotees. That person is may not be a devotee. So we look at it. We try to we understand this is not where we want to be, but we also understand that we are in the process of trying to move out from that position. And uh, have faith in the process. Okay. Any other question, comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Vinod Pranam. So this is for the preaching purposes, Prabhu. Just to clear out my understanding. So this is on 199 when we spoke about Kaldesh Patra.
Okay.
Prabhupada, he clearly also said in other verses that within Bible, this was adjusted or updated, like though not to kill kind of a thing.
Right, right.
So how to take that? Like the whole real purpose is to surrender to God and love, right?
Right, right.
But at the same point, the two different things are being told. One, all religions are same and they are getting adjusted according to Kal Deshpat. But we don't see any adjustments made for Vedas or Puranas. We do take as instructions. But at the same time, Bible, when you compared with Christians, that's what this triggered on.
So my sense about Prabhupada is saying that Islam and Christianity and Judaism, they represent the adjustment.
Yeah.
Kal, Desh, and Patra. So when the Sanatana Dharma is adjusted, one particular adjustment of it manifests as Christianity. One particular adjustment of it manifests as Islam.
Islam, yeah.
Right. So they're essentially he's acknowledging that their essential goal is to develop love for God, which is what the essential principle is. How they do it, because they have adjusted differently, they have evolved into different religions, and even within, and this is a process that happens at a very macro level and at a very micro level also. Like even within Hinduism, it's been adjusted. Amongst Vaishnavism, it's been adjusted between different sampradayas. From one temple to another temple, it's adjusted. You do deity worship in Potomac, you do a deity worship in Gita Nagari, it's very different. I remember I was in Gita Nagari and I said, Mataji, can I do deity worship? They said, yeah. And the process is different over there. So they were basically almost standing and instructing me on the various steps over there. So Kaldesh Patra, they have, at least at that time, they had a lot more priests and brahmanas. They were doing much more elaborate. So many years ago, I don't know about what it is now. So the process keeps happening in our own lives. We keep we keep adjusting. When we got our deities earlier on, we were very enthusiastic. We would bathe them every day, and every evening we would change their clothes and put them to sleep. We actually got beds, and we would actually physically put them to sleep. And then it just became too much. So we then started giving them weekly baths, and then we changed their dresses on a weekly basis, not on a daily basis. So we like to think, Kaldesh Patra, maybe we are lazy, maybe we are, whatever it is. But it's a process that happens at all levels. The only thing that dharmagya, that point that I made, should be done not whimsically, but then, like when we adjusted, we consulted Guru Maharaj and adjusted. So the same mood should be the Guru Sadhu Shastra. They should be consulted in making the adjustment.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So then let me continue with the prayers. How are we doing with time? Okay. I think we're doing okay. 1912. Aho kastam aho anyayam yadyuyam dharmanandana jivitam nartah klishtam vipradharma chutyashraha. Bhishma Dev said, "Oh, what terrible sufferings and what terrible injustices you good souls suffer for being the sons of religion personified. You did not deserve to remain alive under those tribulations, and yet you were protected by the Brahmanas, God, and religion." So from verses 12 to 17, these are kind of the introductory verses which Bhishma speaks to the Pandavas. And you will see that later on Bhishma is glorified just before he leaves his body. He is glorified as a man who speaks many things in many ways in many languages. And we see him do the same thing over here, that he's going to accomplish so much. He has very short amount of time. And each verse that he speaks is so much loaded with different intent that you have to peel the layers back to kind of understand them. So when I was thinking about how best to present it, so one way is that you go along with how Bhishma develops it. So it's almost like he's conducting an orchestra. He builds the crescendo, and then there's the climax. And then when the climax comes, you really enjoy the climax because he has already built the crescendo. I was inclined to do that, but the only drawback is that we would have to come back and revisit his earlier verses, because what he speaks in his earlier verses, he speaks something explicitly and some things implicitly. And the things that he speaks implicitly, basically then, what's the word? They fructify into what he's speaking explicitly later on. So if we just go through the verses, then obviously we just go over the explicit things, understand how the implicit things are fructified, and then come back and visit it, which would take a lot of time. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to actually summarize the verse, the flow of the prayers, this section of the prayers ahead of it. So in a sense, I'm giving away the climax. So I'm going to summarize the flow of the prayers, talking about both the explicit and the implicit messages. So when we go through the verses, we'll go through them only one time, and we'll talk about both what he actually says and what he means to say. Okay, so let's look at the flow of the prayers. So in two verses, 12 and 13, Bhishma is going to acknowledge the material sufferings of Pandavas and Kunti Devi. So we see that in this verse, he says, "What terrible, terrible sufferings here you good souls had to go through." Next verse is, he acknowledges the suffering of Kunti Devi. In the 14th verse, he says that this is your destiny. You are destined to suffer. So better just accept it. And what does it mean when you say that you're destined to suffer? What is the implicit message over there?
Krishna wanted.
You're too much of a devotee. The implicit message is that you perform sinful activities. Right? If somebody comes to you and the person is saying, I'm suffering, and then you say this is your destiny, then it means that you're suffering the reactions of your past sinful activities. So that's what in verse 14 he says, that you accept this as your destiny, as the reaction to your past activities that have now fructified. So this is the realization of pious materialists. They have faith in the scriptures, so they understand the law of karma, understand the principle of destiny, and they're able to process it in this way. In the verse 15, he now puts a proposition saying that there is one flaw in the statement that I just made, that you were suffering because of your destiny, because you actually do not have any sins. You could not have had sins. If you had sins, you would not be sitting here next to Krishna. So something else is going on. So he said, I think the reason that you suffered was because of the inconceivable aspect of time. And then he says, who is time? Time is Krishna. So he's saying you suffered because of the inconceivable aspect of Krishna. So this is as Bhishma is taking the Pandavas through this journey, he's preaching to us also. So the first realization is that of the materialists, that if you suffer, you accept that you're suffering because of your destiny, you're okay. You won't have anxiety. That itself is a very exalted platform. Can you imagine if somebody is suffering and they say, I was destined to suffer? Not out of mode of ignorance, but out of the mode of goodness, from a platform of knowledge. That's the first step that he starts. Then he says that it's because of the inconceivable aspect of Krishna. And the way to understand this is that when we are Mishrit Bhaktas, when we are mixed devotees, then we are under the influence of Krishna, but not completely surrendered to him. So what happens to us is that Krishna takes our karma, he gives us a token reaction. So sometimes we suffer, sometimes we enjoy. Sometimes we enjoy materially, sometimes we enjoy spiritually. Sometimes we suffer spiritually, sometimes we suffer materially. But it is inconceivable because as devotees, we don't expect that to happen. As devotees, we say that we have taken shelter of Krishna, everything should be auspicious now. So where is this suffering coming from? Then it is inconceivable to Yamraj also, because Dharmaraj. Because Dharmaraj understands the law of karma. He says that, okay, you stole 25 paisa, somebody will steal 25 paisa from you. But what happens is somebody steals 5 paisa from us. And Dharmaraj says, what's going on? There should be 25 paisa being stolen. But what's going on is that Krishna is adjusting it. So it is inconceivable to everybody. Krishna is doing it to expunge our karmic reactions and to help us make spiritual advancement. His intentions are clear, but the way he executes it. So later on, Bhishma will say that he'll make this distinction that Krishna is conceivable. His actions are inconceivable. So Krishna you can conceive very simply. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's Bhagwan, Swayam Bhagwan. But his actions are difficult to conceive. Why did he say Parikshit and kill Abhimanyu? Why did he allow the Upapandavs to be killed? Why did he save Parikshit and allowed him to be cursed by a Brahman boy? So that is the second point that Bhishma Dev makes in verse 15. In 16th and 17, he concludes all these sufferings are only by the will of Krishna. So now he distills out everything else. He distills out destiny. He distills out the inconceivable aspect of the reactions, and he says these are just they're by the supreme will of Krishna. So now he's talking about pure devotees. That pure devotees, they have no karma. That's why they are pure devotees. They have no desires separate from Krishna. So Krishna uses them whichever way he wants. If he wants to make them happy, he'll make them happy. And if he wants to make them suffer, he'll make them suffer. Of course, he does not do it maliciously. Everything in relationship with Krishna is ultimately good. But as we see in the case of Arjun and Maharaj Yudhishthir and Parikshit Maharaj, that Krishna puts them into illusion for accomplishing his own mission. So we see Bhishma Dev over here. He is talking to the Pandavas, and he's at the same time he's appeasing them. He's acknowledging what's going on. He's preaching to us also. And the last verse where he says that everything is happening by the inconceivable will of Krishna is his segue into glorifying Krishna. So even though he begins by glorifying Pandavas, and see how effortlessly he takes us into glorifying Krishna, because he starts glorifying them in relationship to Krishna. So keep this flow in mind, and as we will go through the verses, I'll of course call it out. But again, the flow comes through when we refer back and forth, but we'll call it out right up front. So let's do a little bit more discussion on verse 12. I'll read it again. Bhishma Dev said, "Oh, what terrible sufferings and what terrible injustices you good souls suffer for being the sons of religion personified. You did not deserve to remain alive under those tribulations. Yet you were protected by the Brahmanas, God, and religious." So he's calling out factually to all the sufferings that the Pandavas had suffered. So he's telling Bhishma, they have no need for you to show compassion. So one of the reasons, he's telling Yudhishthir, no need to show compassion. So one of the reasons Yudhishthir said that he doesn't want to rule is because he said, I've wronged them out of compassion. And he said, they have wronged you much more. So in this, he's also trying to address the doubts that have risen in the hearts of Yudhishthir. He says that you were protected by the Brahmanas, Dharma, and Krishna. So don't worry about sinful reactions. That was one of the concerns of Yudhishthir. He says, how can there be any sins when the activities that you're doing are protected by Brahmanas, Dharma, and Krishna? And so he says, Vipra Dharma, Achyuta Shreya. And it kind of corresponds to Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. The difference being that instead of Krishna, we have Guru. So we take protection from Guru as the representative of Krishna. And one of the points of discussion, we won't discuss it because of time, but one of the points of discussion is, why do we have three? Any one of them is sufficient. If you take shelter of Krishna, then that itself is sufficient. Why take shelter of Dharma? Why take shelter of Sadhu? If you take shelter of Dharma, that itself is sufficient. Or if you take shelter of Guru or Sadhu, that itself is is sufficient. Something for you to think about. So at this point, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that Bhishma Dev is also sowing the seeds of what he is going to speak later on. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that Bhishma Dev is not referring to the personal protection of Krishna that is accessible to his devotees over here, but he is referring to the general protection of Krishna that is available to those who follow the path of dharma. But Bhishma refers to Krishna as Achyuta. So we see that he's saying Vipra Dharma Achyuta Ashraya. But Bhishma is referring to Krishna as Achyuta, inconceivable. So he's hinting that there is more to it than meets the eye. That what Bhishma is saying right now, that yes, you have the general protection of Krishna, but he's calling him Achyuta to say that Krishna achieves much more than what he lets on. So he's laying this, Bhishma Dev is laying the seeds of, I am going to reveal more to you about this protection that Krishna is offering. And the inconceivable part that he will reveal later on. So like I said, we will talk about it early on, that the same Krishna who is sitting there and protecting the Pandavas is also the cause of all the suffering. That is inconceivable. That at one point, the Kunti Devi is saying that all these trials and tribulations, yet you have protected me. And Bhishma Devi is glorifying that you are protected by Krishna. But Krishna, he is the arsonist and the fireman. He's setting the fire and then he's coming as a fireman and trying and extinguishing it. And all that is glorious. We used to have a person earlier on when I used to work in India. There was a person who would, on Friday evenings, he would take one of the critical tapes and disappear with it. And then everybody would be in a lot of anxiety. Oh, this job will not done, the payroll job will not be done. And then just when things were going to break, he would suddenly appear and say, yeah, I have this tape with me. And everybody would be so relieved that his name is Ghoshal. We would say, oh, thank you, Ghoshalda, thank you, Ghoshalda. But later on we understood that he was doing it just to get attention. So Krishna, of course, doesn't do that, but he appears. Bhishma is saying that he appears to do that. The same person who is the cause of his trials and tribulation is also actually going to be the one who, or the same person who's protecting him is going to be revealed as the one who is causing all these troubles. And Bhishma says again that since everything from Krishna is for the ultimate good, this apparent kashatam anyayam. So kashatam anyayam is nyaya is like being fair and nyaya is being unfairness. Kashatam is suffering. This is actually good. Queen Kunti displays the same mood also in her prayers, where she says these trials and tribulations are good because they help me think about it. This can also be taken as saying that Bhishma advising them about the future, that now that you are the kings, take shelter of Krishna, Brahman, and Dharma to rule in a pious way. And there's a wonderful lecture over here which I won't go through by Srila Prabhupada, which talks about this point of suffering of the devotees is for their own good and glorification. So it's a lecture on, if you have Veda base, it's a lecture on Canto 8, Chapter 22, verses 29 and 30. So if you have time, do read it or listen to it. Okay, next verse. Samtita samsite atirate pandau prithabal prajavaduhu yusmat krate bahu kleshan prapta takavati muhu. As far as my daughter-in-law Kunti is concerned, upon the great General Pandu's death, she became a widow with many children, and therefore she suffered greatly. And when you were grown up, she suffered a great deal also because of your actions. So you can say Bhishma Deva is a Kshatriya, strong mood. Firstly, he's saying that in the previous verse, he says that you actually deserve to die. With all the trials and tribulations, you deserve to die. I'm surprised that you are still alive. So not a very pleasant thing to say. Now he's saying that your mother suffered because of you. That when you were children, she suffered, and when you were grown up, she even suffered more. So, so Bhishma, he's acknowledging the fact that the precarious position of Kunti Devi, that a woman is protected by a husband, but her husband died. After the husband, she's protected by the husband's father. In this case, Bhishma Dev was the de facto father figure there. Bhishma Dev admits that he himself could not protect. Then the mother is protected by the children. So Pandu left, he says, with Bal Praja. Bal Praja means 5 children. He left. Madri committed sati, so Kunti Devi was alone with 5 children, and that did not help. And then later on, when the children grew up, then by their actions, she was still put in. So if she had children who just quietly went into the forest, built a hut and sat down and lived a peaceful life, she would have lived a peaceful life. But she had children who were valiant, great Kshatriyas, great fighters. And because of that, she was in constant anxiety, constant strife. So because of that, she continued to suffer. So that is why he says, Bahum klesha prapta, that she underwent many afflictions. Muhu, constantly, she addresses, she experiences it. And Bhishma, while addressing Yudhishthir, he says Yusmat krate, on your account, to indicate that a great amount of suffering was because of Yusmat krate, because of you. And Bhishma Dev is not being apologetic about it, because he is at this point close to his death, so he's calling things as he sees it. And of course, it may sound hurtful now, but later on Bhishma Dev actually so this is him digging into the soil so that he can plant the seeds of nectar. So while he seems a little harsh now, but he's preparing the ground to ultimately give them the highest level of glorification.
And Prabhuji?
Yeah.
This is appearing like a glorification of Kunti Devi also, right, Prabhuji? It's like grandfather is saying, because of you, your mother suffered. For your sake, she did so much.
It is appearing. You're right when he's saying that on account of others you suffered. So firstly he's indicating his happiness, that you are suffering, now you're not suffering. So that of course is talking about, he's able to talk about it in the past because the present is completely different. And Prabhupada in the purport, Prabhupada is giving the glimpse of what will unfold in the future. Prabhupada says that this means that she was destined to suffer by providence, and this one has to tolerate without being disturbed. So he is glorifying Kunti Devi, that the sufferings came to you because of your destiny, but the fact that you were not disturbed, that is something that is going to be glorious for you. Okay, we'll do the next verse. Sarvam kala kritam manne bhavatam cha yadapriyam sapalo yadvashe loka vayoriva gahanavali. In my opinion, this is all due to inevitable time, under whose control everyone and every planet is carried, just as the clouds are carried by time. So this is the second part of his prayers. First two verses, he acknowledges the sufferings that the Pandavas and Kunti Devi come through. Now he's trying to discern what was the cause of this suffering. So he says that this is because of inevitable time that is controlling everybody in every planet. So here he's talking about destiny. And the reason that he's equating destiny with time, he explains that with the analogy. He says that just as the clouds are carried by the wind. So when the clouds are created and they're sitting in the sky, they just sit over there. They don't do anything. But when the wind comes, then they travel sometimes very, 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 very rapidly along with the wind. So similarly, when we do karma, the reactions to the karmas, they just sit over there. But when the factor of time comes, it serves those reactions. At different times, points of time, different karmic reactions fructify, and that is why they are served. So one question that might be asked is that does that mean that the Pandavas were sinful? Does that mean that Kunti Devi was sinful? So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he poses a question on behalf of Yudhishthir, and he says Yudhishthir could say, but time is simply the substratum of the experience of happiness and distress, which are prarabdha karma. So substratum is kind of what is underneath. So it is the conveyor belt, he's saying. Thus, when you say that time is the cause, time is acting as an assistant, why do you not clearly say that our suffering is our prarabdha karma resulting from our sins? So Yudhishthira Maharaj could ask this question, that if you're saying that if all this suffering is because of time, then just say clearly that we perform sinful activities and we are suffering the consequences of it. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, and this is again him looking into the future verses, that Yudhishthir cannot have committed sinful activities because he is the personification of dharma. The Pandavas could not have been sinful because they have the mercy of Krishna. So clearly speaking, this point that is made by Bhishma Dev is not fully applicable to them, but is a link in a chain that will lead us to the understanding. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, thus Yudhishthira should not be sorry for the inconceivable action of time. Everyone has to bear the action and reactions of time as long as one is within the conditions of the material world. Yudhishthira should not think that he had committed sins in his previous birth and is suffering the consequences. And then Prabhupada says that he gives 3 points, which he says that everybody should live by these 3 guiding principles. 1, even the most pious has to suffer the conditions of material nature. 2, a pious man is faithful to the Lord. And 3, guided by the bona fide Brahmins and Vaishnavas following the religious principles. These 3 guiding principles should be the aim of life. One should not be disturbed by the tricks of eternal time. Even the great controller of the universe, Brahmaji, is under the control of that time. Therefore, one should not grudge being thus controlled by time, despite being a true follower of religious principles. So this question Srila Prabhupada puts it over here because he knows that in future devotees will ask this question, that why do devotees suffer? So this purport is an answer to that question. The devotee might say, I'm performing bhakti. Then why am I suffering like a common materialistic person? Or they might say, I see a materialistic person having more auspiciousness than I do. And this comes from the conception that the results of one's karma are served by time. And the process of karma burns away past and present karma. So Bhishma here is talking about time acting as per the desires of Krishna. So when devotees say, why do we suffer? The answer is because Krishna wills it. Why are we happy? Because Krishna wills it. Why does Krishna will us to suffer? So that we learn lessons and we can correct ourselves. Why does he will us to be happy? So that we keep coming for more and more of it. If Krishna gave us only suffering and bhakti, then for new devotees it will be difficult to take up the process. So that is why he mixes it in. There's a little bit of nectar, a little bit of suffering, a little bit of nectar, a little bit of suffering. So there's enough suffering for us so that we don't become complacent. And there's enough nectar for us to keep hankering for more and more. So very nice purport of Srila Prabhupada that I would recommend strongly. It's specifically meant for practicing devotees like us to read it several times over. Okay, we'll stop over here. See if there's any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. This is Nanda Gopal Das.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Prabhuji, just have a question about the Pandavas suffering and the Kunti Devi suffering, all orchestrated by Krishna, and he also is a protector of those wonderful devotees. So that is, they are pure devotees. Therefore, we can say those sufferings were orchestrated directly by Krishna. Whereas in our case, can we say that, or is it Maya is playing a role, or the karma is playing the role? How to understand that?
So good question. So that's why Bhishma Dev calls it inconceivable. So you remember when we said there are three messages he gives in the prayers. One is the pious materialist who sees all his suffering as the result of his past karma. The third is the pure devotee who sees everything happening by the hand of Krishna. And in the middle is the one where he says that the inconceivable effect of time, and time being Krishna, where we see where we see a little bit of everything. Now, the understanding is that even when we take a little bit of devotion, then, or especially after we take initiation, then our karma is burnt away. But we still get karmic reactions because now Krishna becomes responsible for giving it to us. So in the process of the material world, and this is more of trivia, who is handing out the results of our karma? Who's the personality handing out the results of our karma? It is Shani. It is Shani Dev, right? Shani Dev is the person who is giving us the results of our present activities. And when we take to devotion, then Krishna takes over that responsibility. So he may still pretend to act like Shani Dev. He may still give us the results of our activities, but the reason it is inconceivable is that unlike Shani Dev, he is not bound by any law of karma. For if he had a little bit of reaction coming, he might give us a big reaction, or vice versa. If he had a big reaction coming, he might give us a small reaction. But the reason he's doing it is to help us make progress in devotional service. So the answer to your question is yes. Even for devotees like us, we are getting what we call as Krishna karma, but the way that it is handed out is difficult for us to discern.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Any other questions, comments?
Prabhuji?
Hare Krishna.
Okay, Mataji, you go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Along these lines, I had one other question is that also the karma that comes to us, but along with that, also he guides us as Paramatma, right? So it also influences like how we make decisions in our life. That also gradually you can see that there is changes in how we lived like 5 years ago, and slowly how Paramatma has been guiding and making changes in our decisions too.
Right. And so he's doing both, right? He's giving us the reactions of a karma. He's putting us in distress, and as Paramatma, he's also inspiring us within ourselves. He's as you rightly said, he's guiding us, and even that is inconceivable, right? Because sometimes people say, if Krishna wants us to become a devotee, why doesn't he just make us a devotee? Why does he have to make us go through this whole process of sadhana Vaidhi bhakti and then Raghunatha bhakti and then Prema bhakti, and then we become a devotee, maybe this lifetime, maybe a million lifetime later on. And then at the same time we say that Krishna is anxiously waiting for us to come back, is eagerly looking forward to meeting us in the spiritual world. So why don't you just make us a devotee? As Paramatma, why doesn't he just make sure that every day morning when we get up and chant, we chant perfect rounds? Or our mind does not deviate. So some places he guides us to the best of his ability. Some places he lets us do whatever nonsense we want to do. So uh, uh, combining both your realizations, that yes, that when we are practicing devotees, then we get everything from Krishna in a way that it is difficult to understand. We get happiness, we get suffering, and we get guidance, but in a way that is difficult for us to understand. The only thing that we need to understand is the underlying principle, that everything that we're getting is for our ultimate benefit. That's the point that again Vishmadev will make here.
Thank you.
Prabhuji?
Yes, Prabhu.
You mentioned that, like you mentioned, 3 points should be the goal of life. In that, the second and third point, I could understand that a pious man should be faithful to the Lord. So we should be faithful to the Lord, and we should be guided by a bona fide Vaishnava or Brahmana. It means we should have a spiritual master in our life. So those two I understand. But the first point is, even the most pious man has to suffer the condition of material nature. How that can be our goal of life?
No, not a goal of life. It's understanding that principle, that even the most pious man will suffer. Because if nothing else, they will suffer from disease, old age, and death. So one must not think that because I've taken to the process of bhakti, there will be no suffering coming my way.
But at least for pure devotees, it appears like at least they should be like without suffering. But of course, again, Krishna glorifies that point comes. But
Pure devotee. So there's a difference between suffering and between experiencing that suffering. Like Srila Prabhupada is an example that he went through so many sufferings. He had bad health, and towards his last 4 or 5 months, it was constant pain and anxiety, and he had other sufferings also from his disciples, from people who were envious of him. Now, how much he suffered because of it is a different thing, but the sufferings were there, right? So one should not take to this position that I am pious now, so I should not get old anymore. And if I'm pious now, I'll be eternally young, eternally healthy. My colleagues will eternally love and respect me. No, that's not going to happen.
So circumstances will be like any other person, but how the devotee feels is completely different.
Right, and that's what Prabhupada talks about, that um, uh, you should not feel, he uses that word, right? That you should understand that even the most pious man they'll be suffering for even the most pious person. So he's talking about a conception, that two people may be in the same concept, in the same situation. One person may get completely bewildered by it, and the second person may just accept it and move along. That's the position that Prabhupada says, that we should take it as one of our guiding principles in life. Okay. Anything else?
Since tomorrow is Narjal Ekadashi, can we do like a bonus class tomorrow for an hour, like 6:30 to 7:30, 7:30 to 8:30 Eastern? Zoom is available.
Great idea.
I'm okay by it, but I do notice that the attendance to the class has actually been declining quite a bit. Maybe we need to see, is it just seasonal, or because we did change the tempo of the classes. I'm going a little faster. I don't know if you noticed that I'm going a little faster than I generally do. But if you and Prem Kishore Prabhu determine that there are enough devotees to do the class, I'm more than happy to do it tomorrow.
Sure.
And for Nirjal Ekadashi, my recommendation is drink a lot of water today, but drink it in small cups. When I initially became a devotee, then tried to become a devotee, still trying to. Then I used to do all my Ekadashi in Nirjal, and then I figured out this system that the night before, earlier on in the night before, I would drink like 3-4 big glasses, but they won't really help because the body just processes them out. But then if you drink in small cups, like 10-12 small cups over a period of like a couple of hours, then what the body does is it absorbs all the water, and then the next day your body is hydrated. So then, in fact, you'll see the body is releasing water most of the time next day. So this personal realization experience to share. So I'll wait to hear from either one of you about tomorrow's class. Let me know earlier in the morning. That'll be better.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. Vanchakalpatarubhayascha kripa sindhubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Jai Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.